Are you ready to take bold action and live a life of brilliance? Welcome to the Bold and Brilliant podcast, where women leaders share inspiring stories about daring decisions that shaped their businesses, their lives, and their careers. Today, I'm with the fabulous and amazing Leisa Reid. Leisa is an international speaker, author of 9 books, and the founder of Get Speaking Gigs Now. She's also the CEO of the International Speaker Network. Leisa teaches entrepreneurs how to use public speaking as a soul-fulfilling marketing strategy to attract their ideal clients. As we talk, you'll hear Leisa share her journey of entrepreneurship, including one bold decision that created her path of what was next. Her story of resilience, risk-taking, and transformation will inspire, encourage, and support your personal and professional growth. Please join me in welcoming Leisa to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. Leisa, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Yay. So excited to be here, Tracie.
Yay, me too. Okay. So I love interviewing other women who've been in business for a while. You have been, we've met over the years a few times, but you've been on my radar for a long, long time. And I am really interested to kind of hear what stories come out of our conversation, because I think that there's a lot of women out there who are entrepreneurs, who are in business, who really get a lot from just hearing about the journey that we've been on. And I can't wait to hear more about yours. So kick us off by going back and giving us a little bit of origin story. Like before you did what you do now, what did you do? What was your situation like?
Well, I probably need to mention that I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska,
Oh
which is
yeah.
a small town, far cry from where I am now in Southern California. And I literally moved to Southern California when I graduated high school, and that was my dream. And the dream was to move to California, period, like not come back. As
Yeah.
much as I love Alaska, I was really ready to be warm. And I decided to go to Cal State Fullerton and got my bachelor's and master's degree in speech communication. And I mentioned that not because you need to know every single little detail about me, but I ended up, it was like I knew what I wanted to do when I was 18, but I didn't have a name for it and I didn't know what I could do. And so I ended up teaching at Cal State Fullerton when I was 22 years old. I taught interpersonal communication, only to then start speaking when I was 40 years old. So it's like there's this like really clear, like, this is my jam, this is what I should be doing. And then adult life happens and things happen and I get taken on another path. And then here we come back
That's
at
so
age 40.
okay. That's really interesting. So let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, my youngest is thinking about going to Fullerton, so we'll talk
Okay.
about that offline. I'd love to hear your take. But so leaving Alaska to come here and knowing, like, you knew you wanted to be in communication, but you didn't really know what that meant, or like what made you choose communication as an area of study that you can like
Well, it was
identify from
actually
back then.
even more detailed than that. It was speech communication. And I was in a class or interpersonal communication, which either most college students have to take either that class or public speaking.
Public
I happened to
speaking.
be in interpersonal communication. And it was the study of like actually people communicating one on one with each other and having healthy communication versus the communications that major that I understood at the time was more mass communication, like marketing,
Yeah,
advertising, public
we
relations.
called it Marcom back then,
Yeah.
right?
And I
Yeah.
wasn't really, that did not appeal to me.
Mm.
But when it came down to like, oh, us communicating together and how can we be more effective in that? How can our communication change our relationships?
Almost like a psychology
Yes,
bent
very
to it.
similar to
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I was, and like the classes I got to take were interpersonal, or excuse me, I already said that one. Conflict management, negotiation, um, nonverbal communication. I was like, I'm in. I love it.
Okay. Interesting. So, which isn't where you ended up, obviously, being a public speaker and all of that, but it was But that was the interest. Like, how do you understand each other?
Yes, and I've always loved teaching. Like when I was little, I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. Then I wanted to be a gymnastics teacher, which I was actually during college. I coached gymnastics. So teaching was really the thread.
Mm,
So speaking is very similar to teaching, and I have a teaching style when I speak. And a lot of times I find that people who sometimes they're afraid of public speaking, quote unquote, but I'm like, well, can you teach someone something about what you do? Because if so, you can definitely, move into the public speaking
move
space.
into speaking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot less scary when you think of it that way.
Yeah, that's a really great comparison because it is, as someone who speaks and knows how to teach people things, I can completely see that relationship. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we started with this interpersonal communication one-on-one, but then you became a speaker at 40.
Yeah,
So there's a gap. And
there's a
maybe
big
it's a
gap.
family gap, a personal gap, all of those things. But one of the things that we were talking about was kind of before we became doing what we're doing. We all have a before. I have a corporate girly history. We've got all these different things. Tell me about where you started kind of in the work world that wasn't what you're doing now. Like, what did you have to change from where that was to coming to where you are now?
I would say no matter what job or career I was in, I would always find a way to train or teach or lead in some fashion, whether it was working for someone else or working for myself. I would still really value that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a lot of my career, I'll sum it up. A lot of my career was in college admissions and higher ed,
Mm-hmm.
whether I was on the education side or the admission side. And so I learned a lot about sales and management and executive leadership through that track. And then there was a time in there, a few years, about 5 year period where I had a day spa. Yeah, which is
That's a
like a
twist.
total U-turn in my career. Like that's the one that doesn't quite make sense. But we were able to do all the branding and decide on everything and the hiring and the inventory and it's like all the things that a business owner would need to learn.
Yeah.
I definitely learned in that capacity and started networking.
Do you
And
think
then
that
I
it
would
was
teach
like,
that
I
too.
know I want to work for myself, do something on my own. I love a good day spa. Maybe I'll try that.
No, actually, that's not my story at
Or
all.
just an opportunity?
No, at the time, my ex-husband, he would always get massages and he's like, why don't I was pregnant and he was like, I can't remember if he just said no, maybe it was after we had the baby. I can't remember the exact time. I was probably because I was pregnant at the time, but or having a baby or whatever. But we
How it
decided
goes.
to open up a day spa, and I think it was right around when I had had a baby, and it was like, can I go back or
I'll
not
go
go back
back to
or
work.
whatever that was situation was,
Got it.
and I said, okay, I'm open to that because then I could have flexibility of having my own business. So it was actually his idea, but I wasn't opposed to it, and I was like, okay, I'm along for that ride.
And you said you did that for a few years, but at some point you're like, this is not for me. Or maybe the
we
husband
sold
wasn't for
it
you.
we sold it, and at the time I had fun doing it. I absolutely loved doing it. One of the things about me, Tracie, is if I don't love it, I'm probably not going to last very long doing whatever it is, whether it's working for myself or somebody else. But there were a lot of things I absolutely loved about it, and it became clear that it wasn't going to be. I was falling out of love with it for
Yeah.
various reasons, and so we sold it, and then I went back into university life and became and eventually the director of admissions at a university.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
So maybe this is I'm working for a company that I love, but I need to do something different. We were kind of talking about that
it is.
earlier. It sounds like that kept drawing you in. And I would imagine that seeing the results of that work is very, very apparent and fruitful every year over year, right? New people come in and the university is very bustling and lots of energy. And is that like, when did you decide to make the bold decision to go out on your own doing something else?
Well, with that, it's interesting. I had another safety net in between that and going out
Mm,
on my own. Although I was always interested in dabbling and
Like toe dipping a little
yeah,
bit in it.
creating different things or coming up with different ideas. I just wasn't sure how to like really replace the income at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was taking, by now I had been divorced and I started doing a lot of self-development work. I was raised with that type of childhood with, my dad being a hypnotherapist. We were always talking
Oh,
about self-development and just how could we be better and evolving.
yeah.
So I started studying that with a company, and eventually they decided they were going to have a train the trainer program and you might end up working for them. I thought, oh, well, I've always interested in training. Again, it comes back to training, and I'm like, I really love the work. I had already been involved with them, and couldn't hurt to try this program. So I did the program, and at one point throughout that process I realized, oh, actually I do want to work for them. Now, long story short, I did end up working for them. Only two people were hired out. Well, maybe it was three people were hired out of, maybe 20. And because the job was go out and speak as many times as you can and bring in new clients to the organization. And
Okay.
it was experiential and it was super fun and I loved it. And I love the family environment of the company. I love what the company stands for. It's still around. And to me, that was just perfect for the time in my life, needing some flexibility with being a mom.
Yeah.
That was really important.
Yeah. I love that. So, the the path toward being a speaker was kind of fertilized there because that's what they wanted you to do.
Yeah,
And you also got to have the stability of employment. Of course, back then there's probably more stability in employment than maybe we talk about these days. And also like using your super talents as a
hmm
speaker that were, flourishing from teaching to admissions to where you are now.
absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
it.
it
I
gave
mean,
me
I
a
can
roadmap.
totally, yeah, I can see how clear the path of growth happened for you, knowing where you've ended up, which is where you are now. So talk about how you created, coming out of that, how you created working for yourself and your community in this speaking business and all of
Yeah,
that.
so I started speaking my very first year. I gave over 83 presentations. I
Awesome.
booked them all myself. I did not know what I was doing. I mean, I know how to speak, I know how to deliver the thing, but I didn't know like how the speaking industry worked. I didn't know where you would get speaking engagements, none of
Mm-hmm.
that. But I was not
And we're,
afraid
are we
to.
talking about a combination of paid speaking and
No,
everything, or everything
no,
paid, everything free?
pretty much everything free because that wasn't my goal to become a paid speaker. My goal is to get clients,
Okay.
which is actually a lot of times people think one way's better than the other. I think it really depends on who you are and
On
what
your
your business
goal.
model is. Yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
but usually when you speak to get clients, you end up getting a lot more than a speaker fee.
Right.
So I that was my goal, but about 6 months into that process, I decided I didn't want to do it alone anymore, and I started a speaker network, which is now the International Speaker Network. And so we've been, it's over 10 years now that I've been leading a network of speakers, and that really helped me not feel so alone, made it a lot easier because at that point I was just cold calling, cold reaching outing. I call it cold whatevering. And that wasn't very fun, but I was willing to do it and I'm good at it.
Mhm.
And then I started to realize, oh, when I hang out with other speakers, it's a lot easier to get those beautiful introductions. You're more matched with the audience. It's a win-win for everyone. I love win-win-win. So it really felt easier
Yeah.
and more fulfilling to do it that
Yeah.
way.
And more fun to just do
Yeah,
it in,
more
yeah,
fun.
to do it all in community. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I've been to your International Speaker Network events. I mean, that's honestly why we ended up pairing up for today, because I came to experience your community and I think it's so fantastic. I love that you're bringing different speakers together and everyone has their own goals. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them are going to align with what you're teaching as far as marketing, speaking, and with the value of community, and others are going to have a different plan or path and they may or may not adjust. I mean, there's so much opportunity for all of us as speakers in whatever category we're all looking for, that every time that you can bring a group of people together, I think we're all going to get so much out of just connecting and understanding how big an opportunity there is out there in the world for speakers, especially women telling their stories and sharing expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there just wasn't really a space like that at the time. This was, back in 2013. It was
Yeah, it was on the
kind of
early
some
side
judgment
of.
around it was some
Mhm.
judgment around people speaking quote unquote for free, which I don't usually say it that way, but um and yet it's ironic because you can make so much more money doing it that way. And it's easier to get, and there's all these benefits to it.
Yeah,
But I have clients who do both. I have clients who mix. I call it like find your own combination.
yeah,
Sometimes people are really well suited for, the paid speaking model and also the waive your fee model, or somewhere in the between, maybe even pay to play model. There's lots of different models. So it's about like really, I call it eyes wide open decision making. Like, what makes sense for you, your personality, where you are in your business model,
yeah.
your lifestyle, all those things come into play when making those decisions.
Yeah, so important. All these different people are coming to mind, and in Gather community we have kind of a pay to play thing, but I also myself do waive your fee speaking.
Mhm.
I'll use your terminology because I do like that. And then I know other folks who are doing paid speaking because their audience is kind of that corporate world that brings in people to
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity. I just love it. So tell us about like the decision, that point where you decided to, okay, I'm going to create something that is my creation.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little offline. I had several starts. I don't know if they're called false starts or just kind of didn't go the way I thought it was going to
Little
go.
pebbles that you might have tripped over along the way.
Yes. Over the years. I mean, I'm not going to talk about every single one, but I did start my own business while I was working for this company, and I did all the things right. I did the branding and it looked beautiful, and I had videos and I had audios and I had programs and flyers and all the things, every single thing you can think of to be a success. And it just, after I had finished creating all those things, it just didn't feel right. And I kind of took a pause. I thought, huh, that's interesting. I'm not really excited about going to get clients. I'm just not really feeling it.
Yeah.
And it was right around that time that someone said in my network, they said, "Oh, Leisa, tell me about your speaking coaching business." And I said, "Oh, I don't have one, but thanks for asking." And, finished the conversation. And that night I went home and was like that come to Jesus moment. And I was like, Leisa, talking to myself, Leisa, that's the last time you're saying that. And really took it seriously. I thought, he was not the first person. I had
That's what I was going
people
to ask.
kept
Have there
asking
been
me,
other people? Yeah.
and coaches who I had paid thousands of dollars to were like, "Why are you doing the speaking thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, no." And I just didn't feel ready yet, I guess. I wasn't ready to receive that calling until that day. And once I said yes to myself, I got the URL, I started writing my webinar, and I had that up lickety split and got clients. My very first networking meeting, I stood up for barely 20 seconds, had this man running out of the parking lot, wait, no, no, I need your help. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, it's working, so
Wow.
something's working here.
I love that. That's so funny that I think that story happens every now and then, right? Someone says, "Oh, what about this?" "Oh, I don't really do that. I do this and this." And you say it over and over, and eventually it's like, "Wait, well, people keep asking me about this. Maybe there's a sign here. There's a message that haven't been receiving." And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, it was the day to
It
receive the
was the
message.
day I was ready to check the mail.
Yeah,
And so had the luxury of being able to create that business using all the knowledge that I'd had in the business that quote unquote didn't work.
yeah,
I was like, oh, well, I already know how to do, I know how to do videos. I know how to do audios. I know how to set up a website. I know how, all these things.
yep,
And that was created really quickly, swiftly. And I still had the other career with the company that I absolutely adored and loved, and was still out there speaking for them, and would kind of manage both and do the business stuff for my own on, in the evenings and weekends
yeah.
and such.
Mhm.
Until one day, it shifted, and COVID had something to do with it. I honestly don't know if it would have been I want to say it was an easy decision. COVID helped kind of push it more into this is the right path for me, because I worked for a company where we did everything in person and we had to do a lot of adjusting.
Yeah.
And so the joy that I had for what I was doing was sucked out a little bit, because we were all figuring it out. I mean, it was no one's fault, obviously.
Right.
And but it made it really clear, because people kept asking me to speak about the Get Speaking Gigs Now business. And then I started to feel, okay, this isn't, I'm very above board and of integrity. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like now I'm pushing my business aside, and I don't feel right about that either. So I was like, okay, the balance isn't working anymore. And that's when I
Yeah.
decided it was time to go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? That all of a sudden you're like, well, wait, I came here to talk to you about this, but you want me to talk about this.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to like just throw that under the bus because they're paying me and I like them. And, we have
Yeah.
years of experience. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, what I love about all of this is how willing you were to listen to your own intuition, right? When the time came to make that shift, it's like, this is why this feels weird and it's time to change it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so much value in that for so many people out there working for themselves, trying to figure out kind of how to change and adapt as they move along. You mentioned COVID. I mean, that's a huge part of, my story. And every year since COVID, we've been readjusting and readapting, and what's the right way to there's no straight lines. What's the right way to bend left or right when you see something coming, or you have this kind of intuitive hit of which direction you're meant to go in and serve people in a way that is that much more aligned every time you make a decision, because every decision is a little jog in the path.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
love that.
was it was a really cool process looking back now. And I'm so grateful that I had the courage to go for it. And I'm also grateful for the opportunity to build my business in a really safe environment in which I was able to, take my time. There was no pressure
Yeah.
necessarily. And I think sometimes there's pressure for people to just, quit your job and do your own thing. And it takes time sometimes to figure out just what's your message and where you land in that. And and it's okay to take some time to figure it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been telling people recently who are like, oh, well, I can't do that because I don't have this and I don't have that. I'm like, what you are doing doesn't have to be anything. Doesn't
Right.
have to be what you are told it's supposed to be, what you think it's supposed to be, what you assume, like it doesn't have to be anything. What feels right, and do that. Like, it's
Agreed.
that whole alignment and living with ease as much as we can. I think that this is kind of the season of ease, I think, for a lot of us. And maybe it's a post-COVID reaction, right? We're finally 6 years out and actually know what we want to do. I don't know, we kind of
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of choices. We just made things happen those first couple of years, 3 years, and now it's like, okay, well, where are we going now? And you get
Well, and
to
I think it's generational too. Like,
mm-hmm.
we are in, as Gen Xers, we are in a place where we're influenced by the generations before us and the ones after us. And we're like, oh, the world is changing so fast. And we're
True.
still in this like, wait, doesn't it take like, I want to wait in line. I want a person to take my money. I don't want to have to, make everything so order from my bed, and it arrives on my door and I never see anyone. But then sometimes we're like, well, maybe that is kind of easy. Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
So we're in this like, which one do I
Yeah,
pick?
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think that, there's a lot of comfort in knowing that we know exactly how to do things based on the way our parents did them and how we were raised. But, I have teenagers. My
Yeah.
kids are still 17 and 19. So I've got a lot of Gen Z influence in my life that is very exciting and interesting and fascinating to see how different and separate it is from how things were as we were growing up. And those
Yeah.
poor millennials, they kind of, to me, the millennials are like the lost ones, but that's just because I'm in Gen X. Like, I don't have millennial people so much in my life. I have people that are my age, and I have my kids and their friends. But
Yeah,
to
my daughter's 22, so I have the same, where I like,
Yeah.
that experience with her, and just the fluidity of what life can be and how you can learn and how you can grow and evolve. We were just talking about this the other day where, you can do a lot of self-development just through TikTok videos and who you're finding and following and learning. And we didn't really have that. That wasn't like if you went to a therapist, it would be like super rare in the 80s or
Yeah.
90s, or you were really wealthy, or, there was these different stigmas around it. And now you can learn without, no, I'm not saying get a therapist or not get a therapist. I'm just saying there's now
Yeah.
more
There's
opportunities to
opportunity.
learn
Mhm.
about growth and evolving.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing for those of us who are working for ourselves. I think the personal and professional development, industry, but the opportunity that is there. I mean, that didn't start for me until, well, I guess technically maybe 20 years ago, but until I started coaching 14 years ago, I never read a personal development book until I found the coaching world.
Yeah.
And it's, and it was life changing. And here we are, 14 years later, and the whole world is different, especially my world. Um, the opportunities, like you said, to make those decisions and to look for the messages that are coming our way. Like it's just a mystery of what's going to happen, and we get to decide what it looks like. So good. Okay, so give me, I know we don't want to go too long. I know I warned you that we could easily go very long because we're both going to like tell stories till it's all over. Tell me a little bit about the details for Get Speaking Gigs Now and how you're working with clients now and what that looks like. Of course, this is an evergreen podcast, so nothing too timely, but talk a little bit about, and talk about International Speakers Network too, and how people can not only learn from you, but learn from being in your community and, connect with you and all of those things. Of course, we'll put things in the notes, but give us the description stuff.
With Get Speaking Gigs Now, the reason I talked about getting gigs is because there were a lot of programs that would help you create your talk. But to me, that is just base camp. It is, you can't, it's very difficult to be a speaker if you don't have a talk. That's why I help people get their talks created. I call it Get Your Talk Ready to Rock. But it doesn't end there. You need to actually go give the talk. And so there's this whole strategy and business behind that. Like, what does my stage look like? Who would I be speaking to? How would I practice? Do I need slides? Do I not need slides? How do I get people to sign up for my stuff? How do I get clients? Da 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 da. So there's all these other questions that come up in that realm. So that's what I work on with people, entrepreneurs, business owners in the Get Speaking Gigs Now programs. In the International Speaker Network, and ironically, I've had that group long before I even had my company, um, which is just my heart and soul. It's so beautiful to lead that community. It is a group of entrepreneurs and business owners who want to use or are currently using public speaking as a way to attract their ideal clients to grow their business. And that looks different for any of the members. Everyone has their own, configuration of what that looks like. But what I have found is that it's so much easier to get booked when you are hanging around, the birds of a feather flocking together. You're hanging around other speakers who are in the same game as you. All of a sudden, you're like, wow, I was just got a warm introduction to this place that I didn't know about, and I can easily get a yes and get booked without having to do the whole cold reaching outing, which most
Yeah.
people do not like to do.
Talk a little bit about the idea of competition
Yeah.
when you're talking about so many people,
Mhm.
and there's, in my view, an unlimited number of opportunities, but a
Yeah.
lot of people have a limited thought process around there's only so many conferences or networking groups or whatever that are my personal ideal client, whoever that person might be who's having that
I
opinion.
think I think the competitiveness comes more from the paid speaking model
Mm,
because they're thinking, okay, if there's 5 people considered, I want to be the one chosen or whatever. But the reality is you don't usually know who they're choosing between. They don't really tell you that anyway. It's a
yeah,
longer sales cycle. What I'm talking about, and is just more open. To me, it's like the good news is there's tons of speaking engagements. The bad news is there's tons of speaking engagements because you can easily get overwhelmed. So there's definitely no scarcity. There's no scarcity. How do I know? I mean, I have been speaking for over 10 years, and I usually speak 40 times a year, sometimes 80, 70, 60. Like, I mean, there's so many.
It can be a
So
lot.
stop worrying about it. If you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about it, just stop. There's plenty. The other thing is a lot of like say associations or chambers or chapters or whatever, they have a meeting once a month. They're not going to have you speak 12 times a year at the same meeting. They're going to have you speak one time. Maybe if you're amazing, they'll have you come back the next year or a couple years later because they need some variety. They don't, even if they love you, it might not make sense for you to come back until a couple years have gone by.
Yeah.
So
So you do
that
have to
means,
kind of think of the long game a little bit more
yeah,
than
that
maybe you
means
might think initially.
there's 11 other spots that whole year. Why not have it be your colleagues and trusted friends in the industry? Because then they're going to share that group that they spoke to who needs those 11 other spots filled. You know what I mean? Like,
So it's building
so
that
much easier.
community of referral partner, speaker referral partner kind of situation. Yeah. I love that. And it's so true. You know, I do find that sometimes I'll go to different groups, not your group, not my group, but other groups where it's like some people will share different things, that places that they've spoken. Oh, I'm speaking here. But it's almost like you have to say, well, are they looking, like you have to prompt, are they looking for more speakers? Can I get can I get in? Like you have to be so proactive in asking for the introduction, where when you're really in a community, it's like, here it is. Everyone's willing to share way more. Great.
We set it up so that it's safe to share, in the sense that I always say, all of you are adults. Like, you decide who you want to give that introduction to. We're not just posting it in the chat and then that meeting planner gets inundated with 50 requests.
30 people that are not their people, maybe.
No, it's all about like intentional matchmaking and creating win-win-win. So it's like, if Tracie would be a great speaker for XYZ where I've spoken, you and I would have a conversation, and I would already know about that organization. I'm like, oh, this would be great. They would love to hear your talk. You could really provide value. They need somebody. So I already see the win-win-win. That makes it an easy opportunity. But when people pounce on other people, like, oh, you have a podcast, I want to be a guest, how do I, and you're like, whoa, I don't even know you. Have you ever listened to my show?
Right.
We don't know each other yet. Just hold on a second. It feels weird.
Yeah, it does. In fact, I had someone today fill out my guest interest form, fill out like a sign up for a summit that's coming up in Gather Community, and get on my calendar. And interestingly enough, they're in our system under 3 different email addresses. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so when the appointment came today, I'm like, let's see if they show up. I don't know who this person is. I don't think we've ever spoken. I don't know if we've even been in the same Zoom room together. And as I thought, they didn't even show up. And so I don't know who this person is, but I can just file all that stuff away as random person who I don't even know. And we'll see what happens in the future, if they ever come back again, or if I see them at something else. But it's so interesting. I think that sometimes there's misunderstanding. If you're in a community, people think, oh, we're all here to share with all of us, where really it's about building relationships.
Yeah.
Right. Finding the people who vibe. If your energy matches my energy, then your audiences probably match my audiences. And we could really do some forward motion together, arm in arm, in a lot of ways, because
and there's like you're going to promote your show to your audience, so I get that exposure. I'm going to promote your show to my audience, so then you're going to get that exposure. And it helps the people who are in our audiences, because they're like, oh, I didn't know that Gather Community was out there. I didn't know Tracie Root was out there. How cool is that? And it just, to me, that's a beautiful way to do business. Like, we're all just giving, and we'll see what happens.
And there's no promises, and it's all just magic. Like, it all just is going to show up however it's supposed to show up. And it's not anything we can force. Let's just be ourselves and go have a good time.
Agreed. I love that.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Well, okay. So do you have any kind of wrap up final words that you'd like to share? It's time for us to close down. Of course, we have lots of things to put in the notes, including, some other ways to connect with you and different, programs, opportunities, etc. But how do you want to leave people with like a magic, don't forget Leisa Reid moment?
Should I offer a free gift now?
Well, you can. Yeah. I mean, I'm
Okay.
happy to, as long as it's an evergreen situation. Who
Yes,
knows when
absolutely.
it's March 2026 right now.
Yeah.
I don't know when you're listening, but hopefully it still exists.
Oh, well, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I always leave an evergreen gift because that would be crazy. You could be listening to this in 2030 and still go get
Can
that
you
gift.
imagine? Wouldn't that be
Oh my
amazing?
gosh, that's so exciting. So you can get 5 top tips to get more speaking gigs now at getspeakinggigsnow.com/tips. And that will give you some tips, get you started. They're free, and we'll probably have some other goodies in there for you too.
Amazing. Well, and I love that. So your /tips, obviously, whatever tips you feel like giving out is always going to be at your /tips. I do the same thing. I have a /links. So yeah, we are cut from the same cloth, my friend. And I just looked and I do have all of that in my like stuff that you've already sent me. So I have that for the notes. So that'll work out great. Any last final words?
I would just say do what makes your heart sing. That's what my dad always said, and it still rings true.
I love it. Thank you so much, Leisa. I'm so grateful to have had you here on the podcast. And I can't wait for the world to get to hear this conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracie.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. I'm your host, Tracie Root, and I want to invite you to check out the show notes, find out where you can connect with our guests, find out more about what I and the Gather community have to offer you, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks so much.